Do you get tailbone pain when you're on the rowing machine? This video is for you. So when it comes to tailbone pain, the first thing that we actually need to consider is what happens as soon as our butt touches the seat. Now, when you get on the rowing machine, do you just come, sit down, put your feet in, and start rowing? If you do, then pay attention to this part. Ideally, we actually get our butts into an optimal position. If I just come sit down, my pelvis is most likely not in the most optimal position to get me into the catch position and the finish position without having some extra things happening at my butt and without having some extra things happening at my back and my hip as well. So what you want to do is when you get your butt onto the seat, I want you to actually kind of pay attention to your pelvis. Do you feel like you're really like rotated and kind of rounded at the back? If that's the case, it means that you're most likely tilted posteriorly at the pelvis. What we want to do is not go super far back or super far forward. We want to find somewhere in the middle. So to figure this out, what you're going to do is actually start by standing. And just to get an understanding of our pelvic position, if you think of like my butt really sticking out, I'm arching my back, this is me in a tilt all the way forward or anteriorly. Then I can kind of tuck my butt underneath me, flatten my back a little bit. It ends up kind of bending my knees a little bit and really engages my core more. This is me all the way in that other position, in that posterior back tilt. If I take this posterior back tilt position and come onto the rower, that is the position that I was talking about here, where it actually ends up being more of a kind of flexed position for my back, and I've got my butt tucked underneath me. Now what we want to do is actually find a spot in the middle. So we're going to kind of twerk. I want you to kind of try and bring your pelvis in one direction and the other, like you're moving back and forward. You might feel this in your back. Hopefully it's not aggravating you, but I want you to kind of go back and forward, and then I want you to kind of settle in, make that range smaller, and find a position that's kind of in the middle. This is ideally where we are when we're in our everyday standing position. We want to try to find that neutral pelvic position when we're on the rowing seat. So one of the best ways that I personally find to do this is put your butt down on the seat, and if you need to, just kind of like shift a little bit back and forth. Then go so your legs are straight in front of you and lean forward so you're going into a bit of a hamstring stretch. Now, you might feel that your butt lifts off the seat a little bit. That is your tissues actually moving and tilting you into a different position. Some people take their hands and reach underneath them and grab one side and grab the other and kind of redirect. I find that sometimes that puts people in too much of a forward position. So really do a mix of that or do what's comfortable for you, but you want to feel like you are sitting on your sit bones. And if you're bony, and I'm not, but if you are bony, you might actually feel it directly where, oh yeah, I'm sitting on my tailbone, on my sit bones. We want to feel it more on the sides of our butt, like here. If you're just feeling something here in the tailbone area, then that means that while you're on this seat, you're really tucked underneath and all the pressure of your body is going directly onto the tailbone instead of going onto those sit bones, which ideally is what we're sitting on daily, but often we're in a slouched, kind of relaxed position, putting actually more pressure onto our tailbone area. So if you're getting tailbone pain, this might be the first reason, and this is the first thing to look at. So the second thing to look at for tailbone positioning, once we know that our butt is in a good position on the seat, is to actually pay attention to our form. Our form plays a huge part in how much friction and point tenderness we end up causing in and out and in and out over and over again to our tailbone. So if I'm at the catch position and I'm really trying to reach forward, I want you to not even row, take your handle if you want, and I want you to kind of go into the position that you would be in at the catch. And while you're doing this, I want you to pay attention directly to your bum and the tissues on your booty. So as you go forward, you might feel that we get more pressure towards the front of our butt tissues. Now slowly just bring ourselves back and go into your finished position. Now you're going to feel that the tissue and the weight shifts more towards the back part of our butt. Now, if I'm going from this position to this position constantly, and my butt isn't in an ideal position on the seat, all of that friction and back and forth is happening right on our tailbone. So now what we're doing is we are directing that over, instead of one spot, we're directing that over 2 sit bones and the tissues surrounding it. So paying attention to your form can have a drastic effect on it, because if I try to lean really, really far back, and if you go ahead and try this, you'll feel that that shifts completely to even farther back onto my butt, and you might actually feel some more pressure in the center on your tailbone, even while you're in a good butt position from your original starting position. Then, if I go into the front and I shift more towards that front part, my butt is actually now in a different position than the position that we worked really hard to get it into. So now I am actually a little bit more rotated in one direction, which is the direction that's putting more weight onto my tailbone. So if you are a person who's leaning further back, that might be creating some of this where no matter what you're doing, you are constantly going to be rotating your pelvis more and more, putting more pressure onto the tailbone. So really paying attention to how far back are you going. And one thing that you can do is pay attention to a clock. If we have 12 at the top and we have 11 and 1 o'clock in their respective spots, I always forget if my camera switches it on me, so apologies. For you, I believe that this is 1 and this is 11. My apologies if I have it backwards. But when you're back here, I want you to try and be more towards that 11-ish position and not being more towards the 2 or 130 or 2 130-ish kind of position. Really try to decrease how far back you're going. Then when we're at the catch, our goal is to be more towards the 1 o'clock. We're not trying really hard to get towards a 2 o'clock by really rounding, because that's shifting our pelvis again into the other position. But we don't lift off as much, so it doesn't necessarily move our pelvis as much as it does when we go into the back position. But it still does cause extra friction points and extra points of contact where we're constantly changing what's contacting the seat, which could aggravate the tailbone. Those are the 2 most common things that contribute to tailbone pain on the rowing machine. Some people do find that getting a cushion can help them, but honestly, if you don't fix your butt position and your form first, you could go through tons of cushions and still have that same issue, or have it shift to being more of a rash type of issue. And I do have a whole video on rashes that goes over this as well. But what I would pay attention to is your butt position when you get on the seat and your form. See if that helps, and if not, then go get a cushion and try it. Some people are bony and that extra contact is too much for them. So adding some cushioning and padding can really help some people. So I hope that this was helpful. Please click that thumbs up if you found it helpful. Lets me know that I'm making material that you all like. And if you've got questions, leave them down in the comments below. I'll make sure to make a video trying to answer your questions. And I hope you all have an amazing day. Happy rowing.